Hello, CIT. This is Caitlin Morgan with my teaching presentation on PHP switch control. So the switch statement is very similar to a series of if statements. In many occasions, you may want to compare the same variable with many different values. And depending on what value that variable is, you'll want to execute a different piece of code. So here is my switch statement, and I have given this variable I the value of 1. And if you look down here, my case says if my variable equals to 1, then I'm going to echo I equals 1. So I'm going to run this and show you what it does. And there you see it ran I equals 1. Now, this is really similar to an if statement. And the only thing that I can find that differentiates the two is that you would use a switch control if you want to echo a string. And I don't believe an if statement can do that. So I want to give you an example of a string. So if I change my variable to 4, none of my cases given are 4. So I have a default echo down here that says, yay, it works. And that is a string that I want to echo with this variable. And if you can see, that's what happens. Something else that I found interesting about the switch statement is if you're running multiple cases, you have to give it a break. And the reason for that is if you do not include this break, no matter what your variable is, you will run through all of the cases. So if I give my variable, let's say a value of 0, and I remove these breaks in between the cases, even though the variable is set at 0, it will run through all of these cases. So let me show you what that looks like. So you can see it's echoing all of them. I equals 0, I equals 1, I equals 2, and the default of yay, it works. So unless you want to run through all of these, which would be running through a loop, you have to give it a break. Something else I found interesting about the switch control is that your cases can also be empty. So even though my variable is set to 0, my case for 0 is empty. And so what the switch will naturally do is run through all of them until it hits something or a break. So in this instance, my variable is set to 0. 0 here is empty, but when I run it, it's going to run I is less than 3 but not negative, which is actually the case for the number 2. So let's go ahead and run it for number 3 and see what happens. 1 is 3. So it skipped over everything and went straight down to 3. And I think the last thing that I just want to reiterate about the difference with a switch control versus an if-else statement is that in a switch control, it's only going to run through the cases one time as opposed to repeating through them. It's going to run through them once, and it's either going to find that matching variable or it's not. And if it doesn't, it'll go to the default statement. And that's the only difference really that stood out to me from an if-else statement. So I hope you learned a little bit about the switch control structure today. I know I did. I look forward to getting to know this a little bit more and hopefully being able to utilize it in real life coding. Thank you for watching.